Hey, what's up, guys? Film Geek here, and last night I saw Iron Man 2, starring Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, Don Cheadle as Roddy, which kind of annoys me because I really liked Terrence Howard as that role in the first movie. We've got Scarlett Johansson as the Black Widow, Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer, Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, and Mickey Rourke as Ivan Vanko. This is the sequel to Iron Man. If you did not see Iron Man, the very first Iron Man movie that came out a couple years ago, stop watching this review, do yourself a favor, and go watch Iron Man, because Iron Man was the greatest, in my opinion, superhero movie ever, beating Dark Knight, in my opinion, by like that much. It's just barely better than Dark Knight, but it's still better than Dark Knight. So go watch Iron Man. Back to Iron Man 2. This is not a good sequel. Okay, part of the reason why the original Iron Man is so phenomenal is you basically have one A story and one B story. They're pretty simple story arcs, but they are fleshed out so amazingly well and detailed that it just feels like more is going on than actually is. And it's a great movie with how much depth and how much thought they put into this A storyline and B storyline to really bring it together and make it a fantastic movie. It's not just a great superhero movie, it's a great movie. Iron Man 2 has an A story and a B story and a C story and a D story and an E story, and there's probably an F and a G in there too. There are so many freaking story arcs in Iron Man 2, all just kind of like woven together in such a way that we never really pay a whole lot of attention to any of the stories. They're just kind of like bits and pieces of stuff that we like come back to be like, oh yeah, and this is happening too. Oh, and did you forget we're doing this also? Oh, and just in case you missed the first 10 minutes, this is happening too. Like, there's so many freaking stories, and none of them are very well developed. And it's not enough. It's not that the many stories make it confusing, because it's not confusing. It's very easy to follow, but it's just so convoluted with so much shit going on story-wise. There's way, way, way too many sub-stories going on in this movie, and it weighs down the film. The action sequences are very cool, but they are also very few and far between. Mickey Rourke plays a great villain in this movie, even though he is very underused in this movie. The fact that he is a Russian who barely speaks English gives him very, very little screen time. Sam Rockwell is pretty good. He's been better in other movies like Moon, but he's still pretty good in this movie, and he's pretty much the comic relief. Speaking of comedy, that is one thing this movie sadly lacks. Another great part about Iron Man was that, as well as being an awesome action flick with some very cool drama, it was also incredibly hilarious. There is some super funny moments between Iron Man and Gwyneth Paltrow, and between Iron Man and Terrence Howard. However, that funny back and forth that happened in Iron Man 1, in Iron Man 2, it's replaced by having the characters that are arguing talking on top of each other. This was probably done to try to be funny and to try and continue the relationship that was started between these characters in the first movie, but really all it does is mess things up and make it hard to understand what the two of them are both saying when they're on the screen talking at the same time, and it's just a big mess of confusion in dialogue in these couple of scenes rather than actually being humorous. It's not clever, it's just dumb. And that is something that really, really hurt this movie. There are a couple of plot holes, like the fact that in Iron Man 1 it took Tony Stark a while to figure out how to use the Iron Man suit, even though he made it, whereas in Iron Man 2, Roddy seems to be able to completely have the suit down the very first time he steps into it. Now, I don't know if it's supposed to just be like, hey, he's got lots of military training and flight training, but it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was like, how did he know how to shoot the energy blast out of his hand? I mean, seriously? Scarlett Johansson is pretty much, her sole purpose in this movie is to look fucking hot. And she does it very well. Samuel L. Jackson is just kind of in this movie. He serves two purposes. One, to remind you, hey, Iron Man people watching this movie, Avengers is coming soon, in just a couple of years. We got Avengers under control. That's part one of Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson's second part is to kind of give us things that we shouldn't have. One of the story arcs is that Tony Stark is trying to find an element to replace or to put into his little chest thing that's keeping him alive, because the one that's in there right now is going bad really fast and causing him extreme blood toxicity that's killing him. So he has to find a new element as a power source. Well, I don't want to give you a spoiler here, so if you don't want a spoiler, click ahead 10 seconds. I'll wait and click. Okay, so Nick Fury kind of pops up and tells Tony Stark, hey, there's this new element that you haven't tried yet. Here's all the stuff you need to try and figure it out. You know, it's kind of a very Ex Machina type thing where, like, God comes down and makes everything all better. Nick Fury kind of serves that purpose. And it's kind of off the wall that it's too convenient, I guess. Yeah, there's just not a lot of good things about Iron Man 2. Watch Iron Man. Don't even bother with 2. I know you're all going to see Iron Man 2, but it's just not nearly as good as the original, and there is a lot wrong with it. I give Iron Man 2 a 2.5 out of 5. It wasn't terrible. There were good parts, but for the most part, I was very disappointed.